What's going on YouTube? It's your man Supreme, and welcome back to The Real Rap Show. And this is episode 64 of The Real Rap Show, sentenced to life in federal prison. The man that kidnapped Bobby Brown and had Harlem under pressure. The story of Clarenceheatly, the preacher. Now, before we get this episode started, I want to say thank you to everyone that has been tuning in to The Real Rap Show since day one. Everyone in the comments, and also everyone that gives me great feedback about the show. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so y'all can stay notified whenever I drop a new episode of The Real Rap Show. Now let's get this started. Clarenceheatly was born sometime in the 1950s and grew up in Harlem. As a kid, Clarence was a problem child, not really good in school and getting into trouble. During his teenage years, Clarence began selling drugs in Harlem and was even arrested a few times for drug possession. Clarence never made it to high school because he dropped out of elementary school in the 5th grade. He ended up serving 6 months in jail trying to sell drugs in the early 70s. Clarence was addicted to selling drugs and got arrested again. This time they gave him 6 to 12 years in prison. Now, when Clarence got to Rikers Island, he went to war immediately with a lot of gangsters and ended up stabbing up a lot of dudes on Rikers Island. And his name started to circulate around the jail. Now it's a lot of niggas talking about him. It's a lot of dudes that's now scared of him because of his knife work. Also, Clarence built up a small crew of some real vicious dudes, and these niggas did not play no games on Rikers Island. Rumors on Rikers Island started circulating that Clarence was molesting dudes at knife point. There were dudes that told officers that Clarence made them top him off while he held a razor to their face. When Clarence got shipped up north, immediately he started doing the same shit to dudes. He was now penetrating dudes while his cellmate held the person at knife point. He served around 9 years and was released back to the now drug-infested streets of Harlem, New York, and got right back to the drug game. As soon as he got out, niggas in Harlem were petrified of him behind the stories they heard about him in jail. Niggas in Harlem began calling him the preacher. Preacher formed up a crew of some dudes that would be willing to do anything he said. Preacher's first body in Harlem was a drug dealer named Stacy. At this time, Stacy was a dude that was getting a lot of money on a block in Harlem that Preacher wanted control of. But Stacy wasn't backing down since he didn't know Preacher for being a drug dealer. Preacher's crew consisted of about 6 dudes. One of them was a dude named Malik. Malik was once in the military and suffered from a mental disability. He was so loyal that Malik would sometimes call Preacher his father. Malik was into some real weird shit. Now, another nigga that was down with Preacher's crew was this nigga Apple. Now, I told this story. If you didn't see it, go check that out. But Apple was Rich Porter's uncle who kidnapped Rich Porter's little brother, Donnell. No need to get into detail, but Apple was also a crackhead / alcoholic. Well, they set up Stacy one day and had him lured to a building, and one of Preacher's crew blew Stacy's head off. Malik then undressed Stacy's body and made love to it. Stacy's body was found days later by a crackhead. Preacher and his crew got so known for how they was doing niggas, they began extorting drug dealers in Harlem. They would ride around Harlem in a black car and simply hop out on niggas like police. And it was some big, scary, ugly ass niggas with Preacher. I mean, these niggas that was with Preacher was so tall and ugly that when you saw these niggas coming, you just gave them niggas the money. Preacher was an ugly dude too, but just imagine 6 tall, big niggas with suits on, ugly as hell, walking towards you looking like these niggas just got up out of a fucking casket. Real talk. And like I said, niggas would just give them the money to avoid looking at these niggas for too long and to avoid being killed. But the real shit was this right here. Whoever thought that it was a game and decided not to pay Preacher, niggas would just disappear off the block. And it would be popular fly dudes that everybody knew that would just suddenly disappear off the block. And days or weeks later, you'd hear about them being found naked in some abandoned building, dead. Yo, Preacher's crew was real strong. He had it where if one of the members did something wrong, all the members together would vote on what to do as punishment. Now, there was once a rumor that they caught crackhead ass Apple stealing money and that everybody voted and they beat Apple up. But that's not what really happened. Hit the like button. There was a member of Preacher's crew named Peanut, and Apple had to come to Peanut's house one day, I think either to pick up some money or to drop off some money. So when Apple got to Peanut's house, Peanut's daughter was sitting in the living room. I think the girl was like 13 or 14 years old. So she's sitting there watching TV, and Peanut had to go in the other room to get whatever he was going to get to give Apple. So Apple sits down in the living room with the girl, and Apple said some nasty shit to her. So the little girl didn't say nothing. She looked at Apple and she just kept on watching TV. So Peanut comes out the room, gives Apple whatever he got to give him or however it went down. Apple leaves. The little girl tells Peanut, that guy that was just here said some nasty shit to me. So Peanut goes looking for Apple. He's furious. So the first place he goes is to where Preacher and them be at. But when he got there, Apple wasn't there. So he's furious. He's yelling. He's telling him, yo, I'm going to shoot that guy. He just said something nasty to my daughter. So he's telling Preacher, yo, I'm going to get this dude. What Preacher did was Preacher said, listen, everybody going to vote. And they all voted not to do nothing to Apple. I guess they felt like the situation wasn't that serious. So Preacher made the final vote and said, yo, we're going to leave it alone. Now, about a week later, Peanut and two other members of the crew was sitting inside of Peanut's car on the avenue in Harlem. Now, Peanut hadn't seen Apple since that day. And like I said, they voted. So once they vote, you know, you can't do nothing. Peanut was still kind of bothered by it, but he hadn't seen Apple since. So while they sitting in the car, guess who comes skipping up to the car? This nigga Apple. So he sticks his head inside the car and tell Peanut, you know, drive me up the block. I want to get some weed. So Peanut looking at him like, drive you up the block, nigga, walk. It's 2 blocks away. So Apple said, nah, nigga, you got a new car. I want you to drive me. So Peanut said, all right, man, get in the car. So Apple climbs in the car. They pull off. They got about 2 blocks away. There was a Catholic school that was on the corner that was being dismissed. It was around 2:30, 3 o'clock. So while they're sitting at the light, Apple rolls the window down and said something nasty to one of the little girls that was coming out of school. So Peanut looks at him in the car like, and then, you know, everything he said to his daughter just played back in his head. And he's like, yo, this nigga's really on some pedophile. And Peanut pulled out a .22. And before Apple could even turn his head, he shot Apple in the back. And Apple jumped up and tried to run out the car, and Peanut shot him again, and he shot him in his ass. Now, there was a crossing guard lady right there at the corner that seen the whole thing play out. Apple jumped out the car, took a couple of steps as if he was trying to run, and he passed out about a couple of feet away. Peanut drove off. Luckily, Apple's dumbass survived. Peanut was now on the run because Apple told the cops who shot him. And remember, that crossing guard lady saw the whole thing happen, and when Peanut drove off, that crossing guard lady wrote down Peanut's license plate number. Eventually, Peanut ended up doing time for shooting Apple. Now, Apple was still a part of Preacher's crew. He just didn't come around as much as he used to. Preacher and Apple was also in a relationship. Apple was Preacher's girlfriend. A lot of people don't know that. Hit the like button. Preacher began extorting well-known Harlem drug dealer Alpo. because Alpo had said something disrespectful to Preacher's daughter. Preacher's daughter told him that one day Alpo embarrassed her in front of his friends. Preacher pulled up on Alpo later that night, and Alpo gave Preacher a paper bag filled with money. And it was not just a one-time thing when Preacher pulled up. This dude would appear every week for payment. Now, Preacher wasn't only extorting dudes, but he was also making drug dealers in Harlem perform for him in a sexual manner, if y'all get my drift. Preacher was extorting liquor stores and number holes as well. At this time in Harlem, a lot of young niggas was getting to the money. Dudes like Rich Porter, AZ, and your man Alpo, and a few others. But back then in Harlem, you'd hear about what Preacher did to somebody every other week out there. Preacher and his crew had people in Harlem scared to death. If a drug dealer decided not to pay and tried to hide, he would catch their uncle, their mother, and do them dirty until the money was paid. That's the level him and his crew was on back then. R&B singer Bobby Brown was getting cocaine from a drug dealer in Atlantic City, and Preacher and a few of his guys happened to be out in Atlantic City. So while they was out there, they spotted another group of guys that was talking real loud. These guys had on a lot of jewelry, they was well dressed, and you know Preacher, they like to extort dudes. So, but one of the guys that was with Preacher recognized one of these guys from Atlantic City. So they walked over there to the guys, and Preacher's homeboy, he knew one of the dudes. So when they walked up, one of the drug dealers from Atlantic City was telling a story about what he was going to do to Bobby Brown when he catch him. The dude is saying that Bobby Brown owes him $15,000 for half a kilo of cocaine. The dude said, I've been trying to find him for the longest and I can't find his ass. So when Preacher hears this, his wheel starts turning, because there was a club downtown that Bobby Brown used to always be at. And Preacher and his guys would always go to this club to see if they could find a drug dealer that they could rob or extort. So Preacher would see Bobby Brown on a regular basis at this club. So while this dude is telling the story, Preacher cuts him right off and says, how much do he owe you? And the guy says, $15,000. So Preacher tells the guy, let me buy this beef off you. So the guy's looking at Preacher like, what do you mean buy the beef off me? Preacher said, I'm going to give you the $15,000 right now and I'm going to handle it. So the guy said, you got the money? So Preacher gave the guy $15,000 right there. Now Bobby Brown owes Preacher a half a brick of cocaine. Hit the like button. The next weekend, Preacher and a few of his guys and a female went down to that club in Manhattan. Sometimes they would take a female with them, and they always made sure that the female was gorgeous. They would make sure she was dressed in the latest fashion. She had jewelry on, her hair was done, makeup, because they used those girls to lure the dudes in. Whoever they was trying to rob or extort, they would send that girl at them. And they took this girl with them this particular night. And when they got downtown to the club, guess who they saw standing outside? Whenever they were going to do dirt, Preacher and his guys would ride around in a dirty black van that they would throw guys in there and kidnap people and beat people up in there. It was like a torture van with a sliding door on the side. And this is what they drove down to the club this particular night. So once again, when they got down there, they saw Bobby Brown. And Preacher told the girl, because Bobby Brown loved women. So Preacher told the girl, he said, just walk over there and just stand around. So when the girl got over there, sure enough, Bobby Brown jumped right on her. Yo, what's up, ma? You want to be in the VIP? So she was like, yeah, I'll be in your VIP, but I got to go walk to my car and get something. Walk with me. So, you know, Bobby Brown at this time was really known downtown. He would be down there with no security, and he was a pop star. So Bobby Brown and the girl started walking down the block to her car. So Preacher and them had the van parked up the block. Bobby Brown had no idea what was about to go down. So the girl walked up, almost walking past the van, and she stopped like she was looking for something. And Bobby Brown was looking around like, yo, what's going on, ma? And before Bobby Brown could realize, the door on the van slid open and two big ugly niggas jumped out and grabbed him and threw Bobby Brown in the van, and the van sped off. They took Bobby Brown to a project apartment in the Bronx, and one of the dudes that was with Preacher was that nigga Malik. And I told y'all how Malik get down. So when they got Bobby Brown in the apartment, they told Bobby Brown, strip down. They tied his hands up and his legs. So while they had him there, they was making jokes and laughing, telling Bobby Brown, yo, sing one of your songs, man. And Bobby Brown was so nervous and scared that he was messing up on his own lyrics. So every time he would mess up, Malik would grab a lighter and grab Bobby Brown's prerogative and start burning all the hairs on Bobby Brown's prerogative. They did this to Bobby Brown for hours. Finally, Bobby Brown begged them to stop and told Preacher, here, call my girl, man. She gonna pay you. And Bobby Brown gave Preacher a phone number to call. When Preacher called the number, Whitney Houston answered the phone. And Preacher told Whitney Houston that we got Bobby, and immediately Whitney Houston went into a rage on the phone. She started cursing. She was arguing with Preacher on the phone. Preacher told Whitney Houston, this is serious. Don't do anything stupid. He gave Whitney Houston the address to come to and told Whitney Houston, we want $400,000 cash or you're never gonna see this guy again. And Preacher hung the phone up. And in about 4 hours, Whitney Houston came to the projects in the Bronx disguised as an old lady holding a duffel bag containing $400,000 in cash. She walked upstairs to the apartment, knocked on the door. When Preacher opened the door, Whitney Houston threw the bag of money inside the apartment. Preacher closed the door and then opened the door back up and then threw Bobby Brown in the hallway with no clothes on. Whitney Houston started banging on the door, telling them, give him his clothes. The door opened up and they threw Bobby Brown's clothes to Whitney Houston and they left. Another member of Preacher's crew was police officer John Cuff, who would help Preacher rob rival drug dealers. Cuff was a cop that everybody around Harlem knew, and when drug dealers saw that Preacher had John Cuff on his team, they was even more scared. John Cuff caught so many bodies in Harlem that some of them are so violent, I can't even speak about it. And Malik had caught so many bodies that his mental state was getting worse and worse. So the crew voted to kick Malik out because he was losing his mind. And the decision was made not to only kick him out, but they had to body Malik. So one day, John Cuff told Malik that he had just bought some new guns and he wanted Malik to see the guns. John took Malik to a building and down into a basement, and John Cuff bodied Malik and left. It was now 1994, and Preacher and his crew had bodied over 25 dudes, man, between Harlem and the Bronx. John Cuff was extorting businesses in Harlem, and there was a certain restaurant that he had his eyes set on that was doing real well as far as business. John Cuff tried to extort the owner, but the owner contacted the police, who then contacted the feds. But the feds were already looking for Preacher and his crew. The feds were investigating the drug businesses of Rich Porter, who was murdered by Alpo. They were investigating Donnell's case because it was connected to Preacher. But Preacher and John Cuff was still out there on the streets selling drugs and extorting people, and the murders continued. A whole year went by, and on August 12th, 1996, Preacher was approached by two federal agents while he was using a payphone on the corner in Harlem. He was arrested and taken to the federal building. The feds arrested John Cuff a few days later in Harlem. The feds also found Apple and told him everything that they knew and told Apple it would be smart if he cooperated. They knew about what happened to Darnell, and Apple told the feds that he was scared for his life and his family because if he told, he knew for sure that his family would be in danger, meaning Rich Porter's sister and his mother. Apple still cooperated with the feds and told on Preacher, John Cuff, and more members of the Preacher crew. In February of 1999, 47-year-old Clarence Heatley pleaded guilty to racketeering, murder, and conspiracy to commit murder in connection to more than 13 homicides and was sentenced to the death penalty. Months later, the death penalty was dropped and Preacher was resentenced to life in prison. John Cuff was hit with the same charges and sentenced to life in prison. Due to cooperation, other members were later arrested and given long prison sentences. Peanut was released years later. I think Peanut did about 10 years, but he came home and wrote a book about being down with the Preacher crew. In the end, the Preacher crew was responsible for more than 45 murders. Apple's stupid ass only got 20 years and is currently home, even though I think Apple should have got life in prison because he is the one who kidnapped Darnell in the first place and took him to Preacher. Hey, yo, Apple, fuck you, man. Your day is coming, nigga. Thank you for watching. It's your man Supreme, and you were just tuned in to another episode of The Real Rap Show, and this was episode 64 of The Real Rap Show, Sentenced to Life in Prison, the man that kidnapped Bobby Brown and had Harlem under pressure, the story of Clarence Heatly, the Preacher. Give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so y'all can stay notified whenever I drop a new episode of The Real Rap Show. Now y'all stay safe out there. Real rap.